Welcome to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private.
Welcome to the Recovery Cast, proudly brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private. My name is Oliver and I'm a former alcoholic and addict now in recovery. The Recovery Cast is a podcast created by people in recovery from alcoholism and addiction for people in recovery from alcoholism and addiction. This podcast is meant as a support tool for those in recovery. Everyone who participates in the podcast is in an active recovery program. We are not affiliated with any one recovery methodology and will focus on a variety of different types of recovery, including 12-step recovery such as Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, and other things like Smart Recovery, Celebrate Recovery, Recovery Dharma, Cognitive Behavioural Therapy, and more. And a quick disclaimer, this podcast is intended to be informative. A podcast alone cannot support your sobriety and recovery, so we suggest it only as one component of a daily recovery routine. For more information on what recovery is, please go to www.rehab.melbourne. What's up, Alexis?
What's up, Oliver?
Not much. I'm just sitting here chilling and looking at the reading and thinking, oh, another 12-step one, okay.
Straight vibe into the 12th step.
Yeah.
You know, I heard somewhere that the readings are focused on each step for each month of the year. So January readings of the JFT and the AA daily meditations will be based around step 1 and so on and so forth. Oh, that's why we're going to keep
that makes a lot of
doesn't
sense
it?
Because last month it was like God, meditation, God. Yeah. And now I'm just like, go away.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, how fitting that step 12 is
carrying the message.
Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry the message to, I'm paraphrasing, so I'm going to get it wrong, to the addict that still suffers and practice these principles in all our affairs. Something like that.
Yeah. So today's reading is AA from Daily Reflections, and it's on a common solution. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news that this book carries to us, to those who suffer from alcoholism. Sorry, I'm tripping over my words, guys. Alcoholics Anonymous, page 17. The most far-reaching 12th step work was the publication of our big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. Few can equal that book for carrying the message. My idea is to get out of myself and simply do what I can. Even if I haven't been asked to sponsor and my phone rarely rings, I am still able to do 12th step work. I get involved in brotherly and harmonious action. At meetings, I show up early to greet people and to help set up and to share my experience, strength, and hope. I also do what I can with service work. My higher power gives me exactly what he wants me to do at any given point in my recovery, and if I let him, my willingness will bring 12-step work automatically. That's pretty good. I actually had never thought of, going to a meeting early and helping set up as being 12th step work. Like I was just like, all right, I just put the chairs out because I'm here, you know? I don't know what else to do with my time.
It's helping. It's helping others. Okay. And I've always done that because I don't know. I drive to meetings. I love that sort of, they talk about brotherly harmoniousness or whatever. It's so AA-ish. You know, what about sisterly and just, you know, there's, yeah. Anyway.
Just humanly.
Humanly. And hey, what about dogs? No, I just get there early and I put the seats out and I often hang out with people outside the meeting and I get there early so I can get the, best choice of tea, coffee and biscuits at the beginning before they all get eaten. And
true.
There's something about that. Like, yes, the meeting is one thing, but sometimes I go to the meeting and I listen to the meeting and then I go straight home. But actually, I want to get to know the people outside that too. So rocking up early is one thing I can do. Meeting up for coffee before the meeting is another thing you can do, and going out for dinner afterwards, or just going and having more coffee. Because let's face it, it's a 12-step meeting, and everybody's on the coffee. And probably the cigarettes as well. And you know what, if that's you, then whatever. I have no opinion on that. But yeah, like you got to do this stuff. And that's part of it. So all those things, I mean, even getting a service position of the basic stuff like, I'm going to be the greeter, so you stand outside and say hi to people. You know, don't do that when you're paranoid and freaking out in your first 30 days. But, you know, I ended up very quickly having the key to, you know, the meeting and opening up. And it was really good for my recovery because it just meant that I had to do the same thing every week I was there.
Yeah, it's a safe place to be.
I'm a GSR of a meeting, but obviously it's closed now, so I haven't done much recently, even though I probably should be. But yeah, it's the more involved you get in your recovery, the better, and you don't have to have sponsees or, you know, be sponsoring anyone to practice that 12th step. As we know, you know, that doesn't also mean that you drag your friends who drink too much into meetings. You know, you have to lead by example, but it does mean that you help in whatever small way that you can. And I think we both probably do that, I reckon. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned like greeting as a service position. That was my first ever service position when I decided to get a home group, and I hated it because I'm not social.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not social like that. I'm like, oh, like, yuck. Now I have to say hi to people. Like, but now I do that like without even thinking. You know, like it's second
You've got to get
nature now.
Get certain people, play to your strengths. You know, if you hate people in early recovery, then don't do that. You know, do the literature position so that you're just putting the books out and not talking to anyone.
Yeah.
Or you know, for me, like, I know there are some people that get into recovery and they just don't shut up.
Yes.
Those are the greeters. Like, you pick that person to do the greeting job, and you do whatever. You know, it's not that important. I just looked at the second word and it was tremendous, and I just couldn't stop thinking about Donald Trump. But yeah, I don't know, my higher power gives me exactly what he wants me to do at any given point in my recovery. You know, the universe will give you whatever. So you have to have some willingness. It talks about willingness, and that will bring 12th step work automatically. If you're willing to work for your recovery, then you're going to get to meetings early and help out.
Yeah, definitely. No, you know, it's not even about being willing to work for your recovery. Like, there were some times where like I just straight up like didn't know what else to do with myself. And I was like, I felt unsafe in the time in between each of the meetings I was doing each day. So getting there early was, it like helped quell some of that anxiety that was building up inside of me, you know, and I could settle in a little bit like before the meeting started.
Big time.
This podcast as well in itself is 12-step work, because I guess in a way we're attempting to carry the message.
The message of recovery and of hope and experience that you know, there's hope out there. And for the people who are thinking about going into rehab, then we recommend Hills and Ranges Private. It's amazing. And for the people who are in Hills and Ranges Private, you know, we're just sharing a bit of experience. And when you guys get out of there, you got to go and live your life. And, you know, we're sharing how we did it, how we live our lives, and we remain completely abstinent from all drugs. Now, we're going to talk about another thing. I think, you know, my experience when I was using, you know, before all of that, stuff where I got into the 12 steps and started working and getting into recovery, you know, like my addiction took me down a path of criminal activity. Now, I wasn't a crime kingpin. I wasn't a professional burglar or whatever. I more often than not, my the consequences of my behaviour led to police involvement, even in very small ways. And I think the biggest problem for me in my using was actually my aggression and my anger. And I've had the police attend various things because I was just completely unable to take responsibility for my behaviour, and I was incredibly reactive and angry. And you know, the worst thing that happened to me was when I was in a supermarket car park and someone took my parking space that I thought that it was mine. And in fact, it wasn't even that. It was somebody wouldn't let me reverse into a parking space that I'd seen and driven past because they were behind me and couldn't reverse themselves. And I pulled a 12-inch wrench out on them, like a spanner, adjustable wrench, and threatened to, I threatened them. And, it wasn't them calling the police. It was the fact that I was yelling so loudly that some other people heard me and saw me with this wrench and then called the police. And, I went inside the supermarket, did my shopping and came out, and the police were standing next to my car, and I'm like, oh, you'll want to be speaking to me. And, they said we've had some calls about, threatening behaviour and like, do you have anything on you that you shouldn't? I pulled this huge spanner out of my pocket and said, oh, I've just been working on my car, that's why I've got this huge spanner. It was just so, it was
deceit.
Absolute bullshit. And, I had a big bag of drugs on me and I was just hoping that they wouldn't search me. And that was where my using took me. Absolute disaster. I mean, if I'd continued on down the path that I was going to, there's no telling what would have happened, whether I'd pulled something like that on the wrong person and then got my own head caved in, or ended up in jail, or ended up hurting someone myself, or, God, there's so many different outcomes, and it's a matter of time. And I think that's where addiction takes us. If we don't get hurt through our associations, then we hurt ourselves, or inadvertently, it's just a big disaster waiting to happen. And now that I'm clean, and now that things are so different, it's completely not like that anymore. What's your experience with that?
So I've mentioned on this podcast before, that I've been incarcerated, and I have a long-standing history of arrest and incarceration. Not only within the state of Victoria, but also within the state of Western Australia. I think the first time I was arrested was 14 years old because
Nice.
I beat a girl up at school and her parents called the cops on me.
Wow.
Yeah. I used to be so proud of that as well, and it's just so shameful. But, I ended up, I don't know. I thought that I could get away with whatever I wanted, and not even that I was above the law, but that I just didn't give a fuck what happened. I didn't give a fuck about the law. I didn't give a fuck that I was breaking the law, and I just did whatever I wanted, and if I got caught, I'd always wear it. I was never the type to deny or try to, manipulate my way out of being arrested or anything. Straight up, I'd always cooperate.
You weren't a criminal mastermind. It's like they talk
I just did what I wanted, and if I got caught for it, then I would own up to it straight away. No fucking worries. Yeah, I'm the one you're looking for. Let's go. You don't need to arrest me because I'm not going to try to resist it. But if you want to put the handcuffs on me, do it, daddy. I was always a smart ass. And yeah, I spent a period of time in maximum security prison.
Wow.
And that was very interesting. I'm pretty adaptable, and I didn't have any fears about being there at all. My mother was in and out of jail as I grew up, so were my uncles and my aunties, and it's kind of just, I wasn't scared of anything, The crimes that I did that led me there were just your usual drug addict stuff, burglary, garden variety, burglary, drug dealing, possession, breaking into cars, breaching IVOs that my ex and I would have on each other, and aggression, violence, that sort of thing, So yeah, that was my criminalization journey. And
sounds like a bit of fun.
I just, like you, I had a lot of anger, and a lot of anger and absolute disregard for the law and for anything that was trying to keep me in place as a human being.
Don't take responsibility for our behaviour.
Yeah, I just didn't give a shit. I was going to do what I wanted, and nothing could stop that. No amounts of incarceration could have stopped it until the longer period, and then I kind of got over it and I came into recovery.
I think, there may be people listening who you don't have to be a crim to be suffering from addiction.
Of course not. No.
There are these people out there that there are people who drink too much and then crash their car, and they might have never, not even stolen so much as a packet of chewing gum from the servo in their life. But I think when we are living with addiction, then it is only a matter of time, given that it's just such a precarious way to live. Disaster is only around the corner. It's only a matter of time, given that they're mind-altering substances, they're mood-altering substances. Some of them are illegal. We engage in illegal activity under the influence or whatever it is. These things happen. And even, I'll tell a story about before I even became addicted to, substance abuse. I was addicted to, I had a behavioural addiction, which was graffiti. I actually was a tagger about 10 years ago, and I used to get this incredible rush from spray painting my tag all around everywhere I went, and I would go to house parties and leave at midnight and then just walk home and tag everything. And it was this behavioural addiction of this action getting a reward, and the reward was this rush of adrenaline of doing this behavior. And it's really interesting. I think it was my addiction manifesting very early on, and that's always been something that I was interested in and engaged in, even through my active addiction and in recovery. And I think it is something that is, it's criminal activity. It's illegal to be going and doing this. It's it's viewed as vandalism, and it is it's other people's property, and it's causing damage. And what where that took me was getting arrested as well in that regard, and that sort of paved the way for my addiction too, because it gave me this view that I was like less than, that I was doing this criminal activity and I was a bit of a piece of shit. And then I ended up using drugs as well because I felt bad about what I was doing and I wanted to escape it. And, then I got arrested for doing graffiti, and then they found drugs. And so it was a bit of a big mix up thing. Really, it's very strange. And I think actually, most 12-step meetings that I go to, there are lots of people from that sort of scene.
Yeah, there are.
Of people who do graph, they're just for whatever reason. And all the people who do graffiti that I know are actually all drug users. Maybe they're not addicts, but there's definitely some problematic using there going on. And look, I guess, why are we talking about this stuff, this crime stuff? Good question, actually. I'm a badass and I don't know why I'm telling you. No, really, I guess the real reason is because through being in recovery, we begin to take responsibility for what we do.
Learning accountability.
Yeah.
And it's also a way to share our experience too, because we have been through, we've gone down that road and we've figured out it doesn't work without absolutely totally losing our lives or really causing major harm to anybody, and I think talking about it not only reduces stigma around it, but also shows that fucking anyone can recover. Anyone can recover, even as much of a degenerate piece of shit I used to be. I'm carrying the message. I know, I understand and can connect with the common solution. I can understand and connect with the commonality that connects both myself and somebody that hasn't even been down that road before. It
doesn't matter whether you have or you haven't.
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of time until you do, though.
And you got a lot of people who had very successful lives who are addicts and who have really messed up by doing embezzlement and fraud and things like that. I've heard that story in the rooms a few times. We all drugs and criminal behavior often go hand in hand, especially when we become more desperate you know?
Yeah, do anything to get what...
Yeah, you just
in
got to
the end, it
control
wasn't
everything.
a choice for me. It was just drugs had to come first.
Yeah.
And that's when the petty crime stuff happened. Like I never stole from strangers. I always stole from people that I knew because...
Yeah, I've done that too.
You know, it was just the easiest thing because it was, you know, housemates and family, because you didn't have to go and break into someone's house to get the money. And that's the saddest thing of all, I think, you know, but to turn that on its head, you know, we don't, you know, I don't do that stuff anymore. And that's the best, actually. You know, there's the 12-step stuff of helping others, but the living amends that I can make now, you know, where I take responsibility for my actions and I don't engage in that harmful behaviour anymore. You know, I'm able to buy my mum a bike for her birthday. I'm able to pay for dinner. I'm able to do all those things. And that's the best thing, not only for the people in my life, but also for me, because doing all that stuff, that crime stuff, and even, I mean, it was barely ever the crime of the century, but it was stuff that I would carry with me subconsciously of thinking, you know, deep down in there, I'm a piece of shit. And now that it's like I'm making amends and I'm actually undoing the damage that I caused, and it makes me feel better about myself now. You know?
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
So I was a really big shoplifter, really big, and was really proud of how good I was at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I obviously have worked on my amends process with my sponsor. And I make a living amends and a indirect amends by obviously not stealing anymore, but also by, you know, I donate to charity. So every so often I'll buy a bunch of groceries.
Whoa, that's way better than anything I could ever. That's amazing, Alexis.
I was just really bad. Like I used to I'd be able to walk out of a shopping centre with literally like hundreds of dollars of groceries. Like talking to the fucking
have a nice
day. Like talking to the people on my way out. Like no worries. And so my sponsor and I worked out that if every so often I just donate a small amount of groceries to a food bank, or the food drives that are in my area. So I've only done it a couple of times so far, mind you. And I just do my best not to steal anymore. You know, and so far in recovery I haven't had to. Early recovery I did. Early recovery I did, but in my later recovery this year alone specifically, I haven't had to do that. You know, and I it's weird because I never used to feel the guilt of like shoplifting when I was actually shoplifting, and now when I go to a shop I do feel that. I'm like, oh my god, they're watching me, they know that I've stolen from here before. Oh my god,
they've got my photo on file. I forgot that I was banned from Coles for 5 years, you know, because of shoplifting.
Yeah, I did that at Kmart. They banned me for a few years from Kmart as well. Yeah.
Well,
just stealing makeup. So, and having the money on me to buy it as well. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
It's more of that behaviour of getting a rush, I reckon.
Yes,
like even though you
so
don't
much.
need to.
Yeah, massively.
So we're deeply flawed people, and we're here to try and get well, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And to also share with everyone listening and with ourselves that, you know, look, we can grow and we can evolve, and we don't have to make those sort of choices. And just because we have made those choices in our past doesn't mean that we're absolute pieces of shit for the rest of our life. You know, like we can choose to make better choices, we can make better decisions, and we can work towards being better people and not causing harm anymore. You know, and Hills and Ranges will help you do that, and working an active recovery program will help you do that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the first steps, you know, baby steps, one step at a time and one day at a time. And look, it doesn't happen overnight. You know, it doesn't happen overnight, and I still do things that I'm not always proud of. You know, I'm a human being and I make mistakes, and I think it's important to remember that, because we're all human, you know, and I really would struggle to find someone who's absolutely perfect, you know.
Yeah,
and that's okay. Like
it's a myth.
Yeah, well, I hope so, because you know, I don't want to. If I don't know. Look, sometimes I do feel troubled about the mistakes that I make, and you know what? I'm just trying my best. You know, we're all just trying our best, and I think that's all we need to take away from that. So. Yeah. What's a challenge for today, Alexis? What can we do? Don't shoplift today. You know?
I think I'd like to ask everyone to just reflect back on their, you know, any sort of criminal behaviour that they may or may not have done, and just, you know, sit with yourself in that. Think about it. Think about the way that it hurt, you know, the way that it could have possibly harmed other people, the way that it may have harmed yourself, and maybe brainstorm some ways about, you know, how can you choose not to do that in the future? You know, how will you make your living amends? And a living amends is, you know, that there's direct amends, indirect amends, and living amends. And we make a living amends by making the choice not to act on that behaviour or cause any harm in that form again. So
that's the most powerful one, I think.
Yeah,
Because
I agree.
Like, there's one thing to say sorry. There's one thing to go and do a big tokenistic gesture of, I stole from you, here's the money back. But to actually change your behaviour going forward for an amount of time is the most powerful one. And it's really amazing. Yeah, I think that's the most beautiful one, and that's the amends that I really enjoy making today, like the amends to my mum, where I manipulated her and stole from her and you know, took advantage of her hospitality and love for so many years that now I can give that back. And, you know, I never let her pay for coffee, you know, all those just little things. And it just to see her face when, you know, she sees me succeeding in my life is the most powerful amends that I can make ever. We started with talking about step 12 and now we're talking about amends, but, you know.
Natural flow of the conversation. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. It's powerful stuff, and that's what's on offer for those who are willing to stay the course and stay in recovery. You know, I think it's important, because it's important to remember that you have to continue that willingness as you go on.
Absolutely.
Cool. Do you want to take us out?
Yeah. You've been listening to the Recovery Cast with Oliver and Alexis. What's the next part? If you want to find out more about recovery, I urge you to go to www.rehab.melbourne or
1-800
call Ed or David, I think, on 1-800-422-711. Thanks for bearing with me. Much appreciation.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Recovery Cast. For more, visit us at www.rehab.melbourne.